What if I told you that fear is the biggest illusion of your life? Not an enemy, not an unstoppable force, but an illusion, a trick played by your mind. Think about it. How many times has fear held you back? How many dreams have you abandoned because fear whispered, "What if you fail?" How many moments have you hesitated when deep down you knew exactly what needed to be done? But here's the truth. Fear is not real. It's not a force of nature. It's not an unbreakable chain. Fear is a reaction, a product of our minds trying to protect us from the unknown. And once you learn how to see it for what it truly is, you can destroy it. The Stoics knew this centuries ago. They understood that fear doesn't come from external events. It comes from how we perceive them. Marcus Aurelius said, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength." I used to let fear control my life. I let it dictate my choices. I let it hold me back from the life I was meant to live, until I learned the powerful Stoic strategies that changed everything. And in today's video, I'm going to share them with you. By the end of this, you'll never see fear the same way again. You'll learn not just how to manage it, but how to kill it. So stay with me until the end, because the shift you're about to experience, it could change everything. Strategy 1. Embrace the worst-case scenario. Now that we've exposed fear as an illusion, how do we dismantle it? The first step is to face it head-on. Failure, rejection, losing everything. Most people fear the unknown. But let me ask you this. Have you ever stopped to truly define what failure means for you? Because here's the trick that fear plays on you. It thrives in uncertainty. It grows when you avoid looking at it. It controls you when you refuse to face it head-on. But what if we did the opposite? What if we exposed our worst fears? What if we fully imagined them until they lost their power over us? Years ago, I was stuck. I had a secure job, a stable routine, but deep down, I felt miserable. I wanted more. I wanted to create, to take a risk, to step into something unknown, but fear held me back. I'd lie awake at night, my mind racing with what-ifs. What if I fail? What if I can't make ends meet? What if I throw everything away and regret it? It wasn't just fear, it was paralysis. Then I stumbled across the words of Seneca, the great Stoic philosopher. We suffer more in imagination than in reality. And that's when I decided to do something radical. I sat down and wrote out my worst-case scenario. Not vaguely, not in passing. I fully imagined it. What if I lost everything? I pictured myself broke, struggling to find opportunities, maybe even moving back in with family. And then I asked myself, would I survive? And the answer was yes. I wouldn't die. I wouldn't be lost forever. I would have options, skills, and the ability to rebuild. The fear didn't disappear, but suddenly it didn't control me anymore, because now I knew exactly what I was afraid of. And it wasn't nearly as bad as my mind had made it seem. The brain is wired for survival, not success. It magnifies uncertainty. It fills in the gaps with worst-case scenarios that are far worse than reality. But the moment you define the fear, it shrinks. The moment you describe it in detail, it loses its mystery. That's why the Stoics practiced premeditatio malorum, the premeditation of evils. Seneca said, "Rehearse in your mind the things that you fear. Then, when life brings them, you will not be unprepared." They imagined disaster ahead of time, so that when life tested them, they were already ready. And that's exactly what you need to do. I want you to try this right now. Write down the fear that's been holding you back. Be brutally honest. No filters, no sugarcoating. Define your worst-case scenario in vivid detail. Ask yourself, If this happened, what would my life actually look like? How would I recover? What resources would I have? Now ask yourself, would I survive? Be objective. Would you truly be left with nothing? Or would you, just like every other time in life, find a way to move forward? Fear only controls you when you refuse to look at it. But the second you face it head-on, it loses its grip. When you accept the worst-case scenario and prepare for it, you free yourself to move forward without hesitation. Because once you know you can survive the worst, nothing can stop you. Strategy 2. Focus only on what you can control. Think about the last time you were paralyzed by fear. Was it the fear of failure, fear of rejection, fear of what others might think of you? If you're like most people, your fears aren't just about what could happen. They're about what you can't control. Because fear thrives on uncertainty, and nothing is more uncertain than the things outside of our control. But here's the secret that changed my life. The moment you stop fighting for control over the uncontrollable is the moment you take back your power. How I was paralyzed by fear. Years ago, I found myself at a crossroads. I wanted to leave my stable job and pursue something more meaningful, but fear stopped me. What if I failed? What if I couldn't make a living? What if people thought I was reckless? Every possible disaster played on repeat in my mind, and for weeks, I did nothing. Until one day, I read the words of Epictetus. We suffer not from events, but from our judgment of them. That was my wake-up call. I wasn't suffering because my career change was impossible. I was suffering because I was trying to control everything. People's opinions, the market, the outcome, things that were never mine to control in the first place. But once I shifted my focus to what was in my control, my preparation, my work ethic, my resilience, everything changed. I stopped feeling helpless, and I started taking action. The psychological truth about anxiety. Fear and anxiety stem from one major illusion: the belief that we can control the uncontrollable. But let me ask you this: can you control whether someone likes you? Can you control whether you'll succeed the first time you try? Number. The only thing you can ever control is how you respond. And when you make that shift from external focus to internal control, fear has nowhere to grow. That's why the Stoics taught one of the most powerful mental exercises, the control versus no control list. The next time fear takes over, do this. Grab a piece of paper or your phone. Draw 2 columns. On the left, list everything you can control. Your actions, your mindset, your effort, your discipline. On the right, list what you can't control. Other people's opinions, unexpected setbacks, outcomes. Now look at that list. Everything in the right column? Let it go. Everything in the left column? That's where your power is. Why this sets you free. When you focus only on what you can control, fear loses its power, doubt fades into the background, and your mind stops fighting battles it was never meant to win. Because at the end of the day, you can't control the storm, but you can control how you navigate through it. That's the power of Stoicism. That's the power of focusing only on what's within your control. Strategy 3. Train yourself through voluntary. We all love comfort, a warm bed, a predictable routine, a life free of challenges. But here's the problem. The more we stay comfortable, the weaker we become, because comfort breeds fear, and discomfort breeds strength. Think about it. Why does a cold shower feel unbearable? Why does skipping a meal make us restless? Why does stepping on stage make our heart race? Because we're not used to it, and what we're not used to we fear. How small discomforts made me fearless. I used to be terrified of making big decisions, starting a new project, speaking in front of people, taking risks in my career. But then I discovered a simple Stoic practice that changed everything. Voluntary discomfort. It started small. Every morning I took a cold shower. At first it was unbearable, but after a few weeks I adapted. Then I started fasting for a few hours. At first I felt weak and impatient, but soon I realized hunger wasn't as scary as I thought. Then I challenged myself to speak in public. I stumbled, I felt nervous, but I survived, and something unexpected happened. The more discomfort I embraced, the less fear I felt in every other area of life. Because when you prove to yourself that you can handle small discomforts, you start believing that you can handle bigger challenges too. The psychology of exposure. Therapy science backs this up. There's a well-known psychological technique called exposure therapy. It's used to help people overcome phobias and anxiety. The idea: expose yourself to small doses of fear until it no longer controls you. For example, if you're afraid of heights, you start by looking at a photo of a tall building. Then you stand on a balcony. Eventually, you can stand on a rooftop without fear. Fear fades through repeated exposure, and the Stoics knew this over 2,000 years ago. Seneca said, "We must practice hardship before hardship finds us." Because if you choose discomfort now, you won't be paralyzed by it later. The 7-day discomfort challenge. Want to try this for yourself? For the next 7 days, do one thing that makes you uncomfortable. Here are a few ideas. Take a cold shower, teaches resilience. Skip your morning coffee, trains patience. Speak up in a meeting, builds confidence. Leave your phone behind for a few hours, breaks dependency. Sleep without a blanket, embraces hardship. At the end of each day, write down what you felt. Did it feel impossible at first? Did you adapt? How did it affect your confidence? You'll notice something powerful. Your tolerance for discomfort grows, and suddenly bigger fears don't feel as intimidating, because if you can control discomfort, then discomfort will never control you. Discomfort is the fastest path to fearlessness. Most people run from discomfort. They avoid challenges. They choose the easy path. But the easy path makes you fragile. The Stoics understood this. That's why they would sleep on the ground, wear simple clothes, fast for days at a time, not because they had to, but because they were training. So when real hardship came, they were ready. And if you train yourself to embrace discomfort today, fear will have no power over you tomorrow. Strategy 4. Reflect on past fears. They were. Fear has a way of playing tricks on us. It makes us believe that this time is different, that this fear is too big, that this challenge is impossible. But here's something to think about. How many times have you feared something in the past, only to realize later it wasn't that bad? Because the truth is, your past proves you can overcome anything. Fear tricks us into forgetting our strength. Think back to a time when you were terrified. Maybe it was your first job interview. Maybe it was a difficult conversation you had to have. Maybe it was a big decision that felt impossible at the time. You were anxious. Your heart was racing. You thought, what if this goes terribly wrong? But then you survived. You adapted. And now, that fear is just a memory. So why do we keep forgetting this? Why do we let new fears feel like they're the end of the world? Because fear is an illusion. It tricks us into ignoring our past victories. It convinces us that this time is different when it never really is. How I once feared public speaking. Years ago, I was terrified of public speaking. I remember my first big presentation. My hands were shaking. My voice was unsteady. My mind kept repeating, what if I mess up? What if they judge me? I barely slept the night before. I imagined every possible way it could go wrong. But then I got up there, I spoke. And while it wasn't perfect, it was so much easier than I had imagined. Years later, public speaking became a normal part of my life. Something that once paralyzed me with fear became second nature. And now, that first speech feels like nothing. But at the time, it felt like everything. And that's the lesson. Fear always feels massive in the moment. But later, you look back and wonder, why was I so afraid? The psychology of resilience. Your brain forgets. Here's something fascinating. Your brain naturally forgets how strong you really are. It's a survival mechanism. Your brain is wired to remember fear, but forget resilience. That's why we feel fear so easily, and why we have to actively remind ourselves of past victories. Marcus Aurelius once said, "Fear is temporary, but regret lasts forever." And he was right. Fear fades, but the opportunities you miss because of fear, those stay with you. Want to prove to yourself that you can handle anything? Try this. Grab a notebook and call it your proof journal. Write down every fear you've overcome in your life. Detail how you felt at the time and how it actually turned out. Over time, this journal will become proof. Evidence that every time you've faced fear, you've beaten it. And the next time fear shows up, you won't just rely on hope. You'll have proof that you've conquered fear before, and you'll do it again. The next time fear tells you, "This is too much. I can't handle this. I might fail." Look back. Look at everything you've already overcome. Look at the challenges that once seemed impossible, yet are now just memories. Because if you've beaten fear before, you'll beat it again. And the only difference between fear and courage is the decision to move forward anyway. Let's be honest. Fear doesn't just show up once and disappear. It lingers. It whispers. It waits for the right moment to paralyze you. But today, we've done something different. We've exposed fear for what it truly is, an illusion. And more importantly, we've uncovered 4 Stoic strategies to dismantle it, piece by piece. First, we exposed the worst-case scenario. The unknown is terrifying until we define it. Once you confront the worst that could happen, you take away its mystery, its power. Lesson: fear loses its grip the moment you face it head-on. Second, we took back control. Fear feeds on everything we can't control. What others think, what might go wrong, the chaos of life. But the moment we focus on what we can control, our actions, our mindset, our response, fear shrinks. Lesson: control your mind, and fear loses its throne. Third, we trained through discomfort. Growth and fear cannot coexist. One will always overpower the other. By choosing discomfort, cold showers, fasting, pushing limits, we condition ourselves to be stronger than fear. Lesson: if you seek discomfort, you'll never fear it again. Fourth, we reflected on past fears. Every terrifying moment you faced, you survived, you endured, and you came out stronger. Looking back at past fears reminds you that fear is temporary, but resilience lasts forever. Lesson: your past proves that fear was never as powerful as it seemed. Let's break the illusion once and for all. Fear doesn't stop you. Your reaction to fear does. Most people let fear be their master. But you have another choice. Marcus Aurelius once said, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this and you will find strength." That's the truth. Fear is an internal battle, which means it's one you can win. Now it's time to take action. Drop a comment below. What fear are you facing right now? Say it out loud. Define it. Own it. Then decide. How will you move forward anyway? Like this video if it gave you clarity. Subscribe if you're ready to take control of your mind. Share this with someone who needs to hear this today, because fear isn't something we face alone. but together, we can destroy it. Fear is not real, it's only a signal. Listen to it, but never let it decide for you. The moment you stop obeying fear, you take back your power, and that's when you become unstoppable.